So the first one's a really simple one. How important is the role of on-screen general manager nowadays?
Well, for me, it's not really a role, because it's what I do, which makes it very different than whenever I've done this role before. Although it's not exactly what I do, it is in a lot of ways, if that makes any sense. So it's the first time that there's probably been, when I've played that role anyway, where I am actually a big part of that, and unfortunately for me that I am. So if it's done right, and I do my best I tell it, and the way NXT has been from day one, and I was asked to do it, don't put me on camera. I do not need to be on unless it's absolutely necessary. This isn't about me, this is about the talent. And everybody that works in NXT, that's what we think. It's about the talent, but you do need the odd person. Well, I might not be the most whatever in the world, but I've got built up credibility with the audience of being something. And so I can sort of have that, I have that sort of thing about me, and I always wear a nice suit as well. What's that? But I can react to people. I'm not the best talker in the world, but there's not a single person who's ever done this that I can't stand toe to toe with and keep up with them, or just react off what they're doing. So, and I don't need to say anything. I don't need to be the best wordsmith, but I can get by just out of being able to act, react and not act.
Yeah.
I learned that from watching Michael Caine interview when I was, luckily I saw him on Parkinson, I was very young. They said, what's the best advice you give to actors? He said, don't learn to act, learn to react. And it stuck with me, and I've learned to just, doesn't matter what I think you're going to say, I'm not going to say what I'm going to say, even if I've something that we've had to sort of get together beforehand, until you've delivered it, because I'm looking in your eyes and you might not deliver it the way I expect you to, or what I'm expecting, so I react to what you're doing. So that's why it works in this situation. I think if it's done right, and I think people seem, the feedback I seem to get, and from what I hear, people seem to think we do it right on this show. With Johnny Saint, it's to give credibility to the history of British wrestling. There's no more credible guy that can actually, that has the respect of everybody that ever meets him, but also the wrestlers, but also he's a huge part of why wrestling is the way it is today. People don't realise the thing. There's a young group of wrestlers in the late 90s that started getting tapes of World of Sport, and one of the people that they all started, if you go back and watch the early Ring of Honor stuff, they all started watching, they took to John more than, there was a load of incredible lightweight wrestlers. John happened to be the man, but he looked like a wrestler, and he had this incredible style. And you see people that were copying him, doing these things that he was famous for, which actually he wasn't famous for. They were famous, but he'll tell you that, it's not, George Kidd, being a Scotsman, George Kidd, that was his stuff, and he gifted it onto John. He said, I'm retiring, because John didn't do that stuff. You come and train with me, I will teach you how to do this. I want you to keep those moves alive. But you never heard those, when he did those things, if you ever watch old British wrestling, they always, Ken Walton, the announcer, would always say, yes, and this is the move that George Kidd allowed him to do. This is the sequence of moves that, so George Kidd was always in my conscience, although I never saw him live. I saw the one match that you can see nowadays as a child, which unfortunately is from this, he's near his end of his career, not when he was in his heyday. So it's a lot of it is myth, but John kept his myth alive, and John will tell you that. But it added credibility. So when John, he will step in, and when did you see the other week when there was like a fight going on? Because he's still game as a button, he'll fight, he'll go off. He's a very polite gentleman, but don't take his being 78. He'll have you on the floor and knock you out as quick as possible, and tie you up, and he do all that fancy stuff. But he got trained by Billy Robinson, right? Very fair. He was trained in amateur boxing and wrestling and catching and submission wrestling. He's the real deal. Yeah. So it works well with him, and with having Sid with him to talk for him, he also introduced a new character with Sid. So if it's done right, I think it's very valuable. I've done it a lot. I think it's always pretty much worked when I've done it. There's times when I've seen people do it and it's been okay. There's times when it's not. It's just depending how it's used. So that's a long answer, but that if it's used right, it can work.
Yeah, definitely. I've got one last question. So one of my favourite things about William Regal, and it's something that I think a lot of people overlook nowadays, is that you've done all the comedy stuff right, whether it was the Vince McMahon Kiss My Ass Club, whether it was the tea instance.
I was. He didn't want me to do that, and I insisted on doing that.
Yeah, I read about that before you said that.
And people go, well, no, there's no heat in me not doing it. And there was a reason. I always hate to this is things, but I'd rather people, because if you hear the story, you may understand how to approach this job if you want to do this in a better way, or the understanding of this. I was going from being this general manager, knew that role had come to an end, that we wanted to finish it before it got stale. And he asked me, he said, right, we're going to, eventually we want to make this, we've got this lad called, we obviously, you all know Edge, but he's been in this tag team, we think there's something different. We need to make him look like he can take a beating and a tough guy. Can you come out of this role now, finish it before it hit it on its peak, right? Still game, right? Yeah. Hit it right, you know, and any good comedy show, cut it off before people go, we don't want to overrun it. So he did that, and we want you to go in a very serious role. I said, well, I need a reason, and I personally think there's nothing better than humiliation. He came up with that idea, and he was like, yeah, but I'm going to stop you. And I said, no, right, we were arguing before we went out to do it, and he's going, I said, no, I'm good. If you look, nobody ever brings up the fact that I used to get Rikishi's full, but I said, I want people to really, because I was confident in my skills, I want them to laugh and be hysterics. If you watch the end of that show, Taz was still Taz at the time, the killer Taz. I came out, he said a comment to him, I dragged him in the ring and beat him in 30 seconds, and I went from being this comedy character to being this vicious, spiteful, smashing people, knocking them out, doing them, and that was a role for me to eventually get Edge to where he went from me to, I think it was to Kurt, to somebody else. You know, I know my role in this job. I'm not about me being, I know a role, right? Okay, that's my job. You want me to play this character, I'll do all the comedy, I can do that, because that's what I grew up with here. I always wanted to be a wrestler or in the entertainment world, a clown or a comedian. I got to live in this town, and everything I learned was here, from starting with wrestling, and it progressed to other things, but comedy and entertainers, I was surrounded by it in the 80s, in the circus, and I studied it all, every bit of it, and watched them, how do they get that reaction out? Oh, let me try it. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't matter, I could bluff my way through things, but there's two things in life to have, right? Whether it be money, knowledge, whatever. It's good to have a bulging front pocket, but it's far better off to have a 10 times bulging back pocket. Because this will always run out. And some people, that's all they've got. They don't think about having it. Well, all these things that I'd picked up over the years, and I didn't need until I went to America, that all this comedy, I learned to be a really good wrestler, right? But then it was, I got there, and it's hard to be a good wrestler with people who don't really do that style of wrestling. Let me make myself into a carry-on character, which I did in WCW. I thought, and I used to think about things like this. People in Britain will be in on the act with me. They'll get it, but people over here will hate it. At the same time, they'll be thinking, he's not really what he is, but we get it. He's Sid James here, or he's Kenneth Williams, or he's Tommy Cooper, or he's whatever, because all those had an influence on me. You ever see the way I moved? Move around the ring like Tommy Cooper. So when I had my robe on and little lines and little Kenneth Williams things and all there's an amount of people that I'm grateful for, of comedians and entertainers. But I had all these little tricks and one-liners and things, or reacting to things in a certain way, and then I could switch. So it was comedy, and I think that's where the question started. I was happy to do those things. I love doing it. Plus, it gave me a 30-year career.
Yeah.
If I hadn't have had that ability, my career would have ended a lot sooner, because I had there was times when I didn't have to do the physical style that I was known for doing. I got a break from it.
Yeah.
Right? I ended up having a full 30-year wrestling career, a full-time 30-year wrestling career. Well, 1 year off because of an illness. In fact, if you total up the entire time I wrestled, with suspensions a couple of times, which is all down to me, nobody else at all, injuries, a year off being sick, I wrestled an average of 180 days for 26 years. Very few people ever have that in their life. But a lot of the things when I went to WWE gave me a break. I was doing, because I was being that, but I wasn't having to do that, getting dropped on my head, all them suplexes and all that stuff. I could still work physically, but I could get away with doing more entertainment stuff instead of just bang, 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 bang. And you saw, as a lot of my friends who either not with us anymore or had career shortening injuries, or a cripple, or not like me. I'm fortunate I can get up and still walk about and do whatever I can do. So it gave me a break, and it was all skills learned watching people, mostly either on TV as a child, or, as I say, you should always go and experience live anything. Live wrestling, live music, live entertainment. Don't waste your life always watching a screen. Sometimes you have no choice, but any chance you get to go out and experience live entertainment, do it, because that's when you get the most of it. Sometimes it's not good, but if it's good, you actually get that feeling. It's better than watching a screen doing it, right? So, this town was non-stop. It was 20-week summer seasons at the Opera House with Cannon and Ball and Russ Abbott and people that I used to be able to go and watch them when I wasn't wrestling, or like when I used to just work, or certain nights off that we had. I'd go and watch a different show, and they were all here all the time in the 80s. And how did they do that? And I'd go and study the circus. How did they make? Oh, they're making them. The clowns are doing that. And that. Oh, and the eye ride. I know that. Guy walking a tightrope, but when he gets about halfway, he'll go. And first time I saw it. Second time I saw it, I'm going, he's just doing a trick here. He's to make people go, and you sort of tie all those things in to learn how to do this. That's why I think I've had and I can help people now. Forget looking at it like wrestlers look at it. I always tell people, whatever you think you know, but forget wrestling. Let's look at it from out here, and let's start again. Let's start looking at it. First of all, forget whatever you think what wrestling is. You are portraying a professional fighter with instincts that should be trained like a fighter. Would you do some of the things that I see people do? No. Right. So, and then you can still do those things. You just add a bit of whatever. Because no matter what you start off in life liking, your taste change gradually, right? You start off liking music, then something else will take you in a different path. But after a while, doesn't matter what you see, you start to evolve. Sometimes you stay the same or you leave. Sometimes you keep at it, but you start noticing, you go back and watch. I always used to think, because I never thought I could be anything apart from that, and it was only because of wrestlers that I watched when I was younger, or taught me tricks. Don't worry about what you're doing tonight, just worry about whether it'll hold up in 20 years if people can go back and watch it. And I was lucky to go to America when I was on TV, but they may not get it now. Like, you go back and watch that stuff I was doing with Edge. There was nobody doing stuff like that then, or with Chris, or with people. We were like, there was doing all kinds of stuff that people you see everybody doing now, and this was 20 years ago, which is a normal thing now. Some of them, nobody knows, you see the forearms on the face, or the people trying to do that straight jacket thing, but they do it wrong. But I was doing that in '93 in America, but it's only stuff that I learned here, that I was watching from a kid here, but people had taught me how to do it, and it just transcended to different people. And Daniel Bryan came into my life. I was fortunate enough, and he wanted to learn British wrestling, so I taught him everything. I sent him over here for a while. His story tells itself, and it's the only reason most people know me is because of association with him. Why would you? If you how old are you?
29, 30 next month.
Right.
Yeah.
last time I wrestled, you know, I went to America 27 years
Yeah.
ago. So how would you know what I did in W? You know what I mean? You haven't got time in the day to know who I am. But you might have heard my name or seen me, little bits of me, but you probably heard my name more because of me being something that you've never seen. You've had to go on out.
Yeah.
So I'm fortunate that he came into my life, and my association with him has kept my name going, or then it made other people that liked him come to find me, and we're where we are today. It was just good luck on my part, not and then people go, oh, you know. I'm fortunate that he came and wanted to learn, asked me to. I was like, yeah, please, I'd love to teach you that. Yeah, I'd love to say, can I go in? Yeah, I can call people. That's how this works.
Yeah.
If everybody had that idea, this life would be a lot better. Just try and help a bit of what you can do and be nice to people instead of just take. Because if you do that, if everybody did that, this world would be a lot better place instead of just thinking about them.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
All right.
Absolute pleasure.